Everyone is an expert, even when they're not. I'll show you. According to research, if you start out any pitch to an audience by saying, according to research, or you begin with a bunch of stats, figures, or numbers, the audience instantly switches to debunk mode. According to research, huh? Fancy graph, asshole. When a presenter shows up with specific numbers, they openly invite scrutiny on a level where none existed before you came looking all fancy, making claims, stating facts, pushing numbers in our face. People today can Google things sideways. We love to debunk theories and claims, and with the world's information at our fingertips, we feel powerfully skeptical towards any expert. So in a way, for a message to pass through the BS filter we've created in our information-saturated lives anymore, there has to be marketing involved. Trial lawyers know that perception is important. There's millions of dollars going into expert testimonies, graphs, figures, hard facts, but what percentage of that budget goes towards marketing? Towards showing the facts rather than stating them? Well, that's what we're talking about today on Lawson. Marketing in trials, content in the courtroom, passing through the filters. Let's go.
Lawson, the podcast for law firms. Powered by ConsultWebs.
Welcome back to Lawson, the only podcast for law firms that flinches at the finches and is coo with the doves. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in personal and professional developments. I am Audubon Birdman Jake Sanders, serving a life sentence in Alcatraz prison, and with me is Paul Julius. He's spooned his way from his cell into mine to record the show. Paul, why are we in prison again?
Oh, I thought it was something you did, to be honest, but we're here. We're the only ones in Alcatraz, which is very creepy.
And none of the locks work.
It sounds good, though.
It feels good.
It does. It's just you, me, and this spoon.
Lots of reverb, and you didn't even have to spoon. You could have just opened up the door.
I like a challenge.
What's on the show today?
On the show, today we talk about the power of visuals in marketing with an article from HubSpot. And then we sit down with Aaron Burke and Irma Hawkins from DK Global to talk about the power of illustration and visual marketing in trial law. And then we illustrate the power of interrogation twofold with 5 questions we ask everyone twice.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The article today is from HubSpot. It's 45 visual content marketing statistics you should know in 2018 by Jesse Mahwini. Anyway. How else would you say that, Paul?
Anyway, but like that.
It's like so sorry. It's like Lego my ego. Jesse Mawini? Jesse Mawini. We're not going to go through all 45 of these things because, man. But we picked out a couple. Paul, you found this article. Break into it. Why is this important? Visual content marketing. Why'd you choose this?
So there's a lot in here. Like you said, it covers 45 different things. And it's interesting that it covers general visual content, video, infographics, social media. There's a lot of different statistics in here on how things are relevant, how things get noticed by people more. And, it's fascinating, especially with the emergence of things like virtual reality. And it relates later on to our guests who use, illustration and animation to help illustrate different parts of cases for lawyers in the courtroom. And we've talked about video marketing before, so I don't really want to hit that so much. But some of the general stuff in here is this was the one that really – this is why I stopped and took this article is it said when people hear information, they're likely to remember only 10% of that information 3 days later. However, if a relevant image is paired with that same information, people retain 65% of the information 3 days later. So there's obviously a correlation. And I think without getting too far into the science of it, because I'm not that informed, but I know that our brain reacts differently when you're given a picture as opposed to just words. And if you
Mhm.
have something to associate a concept with visually, it's going to be much more impactful. I mean, that's just how we're wired.
And it goes on to say statistic 27 was
Mm,
people following directions with text and illustrations do better than people following directions without illustrations.
yes.
So text provides a level of abstraction. Words are sort of the auditory version of it, but that's pretty powerful. Things that come through the auditory cortex, that involves a layer of processing. Now pair that with an image. That does describe why video is so impactful. Video is much more shareable. People are, information is easier ascertained. No shock there. But it's good to point it out because in trial law or other negotiations where lawyers may find themselves stuck with words, visuals can provide a nice side way and really impactful. Later on in the interview, we find out, DK Global, the minute they get some of their animations or visuals submitted as evidence in trials, the other side is almost instantly trying to settle the case because there's no way that they can get around it. Those animations are so compelling that they're winning trials. And that's something that we didn't mention later on. And so, as you were talking about virtual reality, augmented reality, how are lawyers availing themselves of the visual mediums? And we talk about how lawyers and law firms can do that on marketing, social media, and in trials.
Absolutely. And I think too there's kind of an obvious thing here where people, YouTube's the number 2 search engine.
Mm-hmm.
People want to see how things are done. Show don't tell.
Right.
I think that makes sense. And step even further. Go back to like the introduction of MTV. Before you used to hear the song on the radio. Well, now, while some of these videos, it's just the band playing or whatever, but some of them told a story.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them illustrated a little bit of insight into what was going on in the artist's head when they were doing the concept for that song. And I think it strikes me as that like people it seems like it hasn't occurred to people to function hand in hand with that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's always this, I'm going to write you an email, or I'm going to, make a video or whatever. And the reason I bring it up is because later on we talked to Aaron and Irma about social media and about Twitter and about some of the stuff we've done.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that, it's so interchangeable that you can have a thread where it's a comment, a retweet, a GIF, a link to YouTube, somebody else talking, and it's just all flowing there together, all having this kind of mix of communication that's all happening in this same kind of thread.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. And what's taken away from that, and how is information translated using the different mediums that are available to us? This is amazing. HubSpot has awesome marketing advice, and it's very clear cut.
Yes.
You don't have to go hunting for things. And
No.
that's sort of, they live their credo, that marketing thing is just, if you're looking for information, you need to give it to people in a way that they're going to access it. Is it visuals? Is it content? Is it text? Sometimes you have to have text to give, life to the visuals. And without the marriage of visuals and text, you're lost, or visuals and words. And so everything plays together. But we're discovering that as legal consumers are more swiping through Instagram, they find it easier. All of my compatriots, they're on Instagram. No one's on Facebook much anymore. Twitter is more of a heady kind of thing, but social media wise, people are just cruising through pictures. We're a visual culture. So that's translating into the jury box, and that's translating to any type of complex information transaction that you have to do. You got to get some complex information across. How can you think of the mixed media opportunities and who can you trust,
Yeah.
to help give it to you? That's the other thing. That's because DK Global's like, we're nothing without the expertise of someone who works with the highway, safety traffic administration.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's that they're nothing without it, but I think they interpret these experts. I mean, you said it. These folks win cases. That's it. We're going to talk to people who literally make animations that win cases without ever having to go to trial.
Yeah.
That's
it. Let's go to it.
Let's go.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Any lawyer looking to grow their business online can generate more leads from their website by hiring ConsultWebs. After working with lawyers exclusively since 1999, we've tested thousands of web designs and marketing strategies, so we know what flips and what flops. For more information, visit www.consultwebs.com today.
And now, for a lawsome interview.
DK Global is a full-service interactive media provider that helps legal teams express themselves in a clear, compelling, and accurate way. Since 1998, DK Global has provided animations, illustrations, and other compelling marketing solutions to civil, criminal, plaintiff, and defense attorneys, along with several governmental entities in thousands of trials. With us today is DK Global's Aaron Burke, social media strategist, and Irma Hawkins, marketing coordinator. Aaron has worked as a digital content provider for private corporate agencies and as an investigative travel journalist and columnist for print and web publications. Irma Hawkins has an extensive history in the anime and video game industry, and together they are bringing their marketing acumen to the Lawson podcast. Irma, Aaron, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yeah.
So let's start with marketing. You guys do animations, accident reconstruction. Marketing in a trial is super important, and go about that and what makes DK Global unique, and how do you work and create trial content with your clients?
So if we're talking about how marketing is important in a trial for an attorney, correct?
Yes.
I can give you an example. I think that might better answer your question. We work very closely with the firm Tanshy & Boyle, which I'm sure you've heard of. They have a big case. Even if it's not that much of a big case, I do notice that they tend to publicize. They try to get the public on their side, and they'll do different ways of marketing. They'll either do a on the spot, like for the fires, when we had those fires in California, which I think everyone knows. Their marketing PR person is Angela Bailey, and she's really good. She tries to get involved with the community as much as possible. She tries to put their name out there. They love working with us really closely so that we can promote them, and at the same time, they promote us. When they do something like that, where they get the public involved, it helps them to sort of push, even though the jury is not supposed to be swayed, but it sort of helps the jury be swayed and the judge. I mean, after all, they do watch TV, right? They're on their phones all the time. Who's not?
Right.
So I think it has a great impact. And when you get the public opinion on your side, marketing is the best tool to get there.
Interesting. But inside the trial, DK Global is working with trial attorneys making marketing content for the trial itself. How do you guys go about working with your specific clients?
So how do we go about with working with our clients for preparing them for trial?
Right. Yeah. Getting that content together. What's kind of the process, and how do you get picked for that? How do you just stand out on the corner and just say, we'll make you some animations for
Yes.
twirling signs.
Sign spinning.
No. I think we put a lot of effort in our company to really stand out and be that one firm where we're not selling to attorneys. We're showing them that we want to work together with them to help them in a very stressful situation, which can be a trial. And I'm sure, Jacob, you're the attorney, right? So you know.
Oh, no. I wish I was attorney. I think I'd have a lot more fancy shoes.
I have them, and I'm not an attorney, but okay.
So it doesn't limit us. No, I worked at a law firm marketing director for several years. So yeah, but I've been close to that fire.
So I don't know if you know, but I get to interview a lot of attorneys. Part of my job responsibilities. It's an awesome one. I get to go and meet a lot of the attorneys whenever they settle a case or they get a verdict favorably. A lot of the things that I hear is that it is one of the most stressful situations for them when they're in trial. And the last thing they need to worry about issues with one of their contractors. So what our aim is to make this process as easy as possible for the attorney in such a difficult moment for them, and to make it easier for them to help their client as opposed to be wasting time with us. And so when we work with the attorneys, we work close with their experts. We request operative reports from the beginning, the police reports, and any other materials that they may have in order for us to create a custom content.
I think a big one here, guys, is that you have to be dedicated to the accuracy of any visual that you're going to bring into court for admissibility reasons. But the big thing is that the reason that you want to do that form of, you call it trial marketing, I suppose, is that living in a more visual world and understanding the spatial reality of something that occurred, an accident or a collision, something like that, is an important thing to show people rather than just talking about an event. And so showing someone an accurate representation of what happened can vastly impact the outcome of a trial. And I think more and more attorneys are learning that bringing a visual either induces a quick settlement or impacts the verdict at the end of a trial. We're seeing that all the time.
That's amazing to hear you say. And looking through at some of the work that you have posted as samples on your site, it's incredibly thorough. And it strikes me that we've had lawyers on the show and people who are really into self-promotion and stuff like that. And one thing they've told us is that everything when you walk into a courtroom is marketing. Your suit, how you present yourself, all that stuff. And so, I mean, this is a real difference maker. This isn't just like, hey, we slap some stuff up on some slides. You're talking about a professional presentation that's going to win or lose a case in some cases.
We're pulling in experts, certified experts that work on this stuff. So, if you're going to bring a visual into a courtroom, it has to be as accurate as possible. Obviously, opposing counsel is going to say that's not how it happened. So it needs to be as perfect as possible. One of the interesting things about that is that if it is admitted, that alone is its own sort of form of marketing, that this has been admitted into court as a demonstrative exhibit, right? And people have faith in that. And so what you're showing them, a surgical animation or a medical illustration or labeled slides and things like that, becomes all that much more powerful for conveying your argument.
And it's one of those things too, like we tell a lot of our clients when it comes to video, that when it and a lot of times when it's done right, it's seamless. When it's done wrong, it's terrible and everybody notices. So, I mean, there's saying that you get experts taking the time. I see these illustrations. It's incredible. But that kind of leads me to the next question is, what are some of like the craziest content requests you've received? And to kind of follow on that, what's one instance where like the content was the answer to overcoming a barrier or a problem in a case?
So we've had a lot of, I guess you could say, craziest, but so the weirdest ones are probably the simplest ones, because you get to see an injury, and when we get the reports and whatnot, and the pictures and images from them, and we say, how did this happen by doing something so simple? Like, that's the question. And that's what the attorney's looking for, because everyone's going to wonder, how the heck did this happen by someone eating some dough?
Right.
How are they losing a leg?
Wow.
So for us, it's important. I think that's the you asked.
Did you say eating dough?
And then losing a leg. That's wild. Stay away from that
I'm never gonna
bakery.
do it again.
I'm good.
I didn't know you can lose limbs with that stuff. I mean,
So there's an
We have a
example.
person here that loves dough, and we're like, stop eating it.
Yeah, don't do it.
man.
Oh
You
my
know,
gosh.
That's right.
But yeah, some of them are very scary. We had one who was just mowing his lawn, and then his lawnmower caught on fire, and he caught on fire. So some of them are pretty scary. I think the ones that scare me the most are when people lose their leg, they lose a limb. They're pretty graphic when we recreate that. I have to review those, and oh my gosh, sometimes I can't look directly at the screen. They can be very, very powerful. And that's just a lot. I mean, if someone like me can see it, then that means that most of the jury is going to be probably thinking the same thing. Like,
without
and
a
then
doubt.
to take that and then visually recreate that in a way that the jury is going to be both impacted by how graphic it is, but not so much that they've totally discussed it and they're going to forget it, and try to ignore it.
No, seriously, those things stay with you.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
I think the last case that, one of the last cases that we worked on is, it was a car accident, and it didn't look that bad, but then you see the guy, the plaintiff, and he's on the floor, and his leg is just like hanging by a little piece of skin to the side. And you see the paramedics like picking him up, and the leg is like dragging on the floor, and the paramedic doesn't know what to do with the leg. So that was, those are pretty impactful. And then we have to recreate that. So
it's crazy here all the time, basically, guys.
But that's tough. That's a tough balance because you want to show the impact. No pun intended, but the impact of the accident. But at the same time, you don't want to detract from the narrative by getting people distracted on how graphic it was. I mean, which is unfortunately that's the nature of the business. I mean, that's what happens in car accidents. Yeah,
definitely, because if you get too gory, then it's not going to be admissible in court. So you have to really find that balance. And I think we have here at this company.
Yeah, one of the the crazy stuff that happens is when we arrive, Irma and I arrive to work, and the animation team, that's working in the studio, has been here all night. And we're notorious for working, last minute, and don't want to get well known for it, but that's what we do.
Yeah,
So,
it may not be content related, but we get pieces that it's a work of 3 weeks, and we have to put it in like 24, 36 hours tops. Like we have right now a couple of cases that we need to get out in a day. So, and it's a lot of work, but we make it work. I think that is something that really separates us from our competitors. Is we really don't turn work away. We will make it work for any attorney.
We have lots of coffee, lots of hot sauce, lots of food. So
got to keep them happy.
Down, and you have to do a lot of work in a very short period of time.
That's how it works. A lot of times, and in LA, I'm pretty sure you guys understand, oh, sorry, we need it yesterday. Year after year, it seems like legal advertising and marketing conferences are full of lawyers absorbing information like a sponge, and yet the world is shy of fantastic marketing and advertising and legal inside the courtroom and otherwise. And I just think that lawyers, some, fail to see the impact of advertising their truth, like packaging the perception of their messages. In a heady profession like the law, the words, the statutes do all the talking. So why waste time with marketing in trial? And just what are your thoughts there?
I think obviously showing someone something versus telling them about it is now, at least, and always going to be a far more powerful. I don't think that attorneys get the recognition that they necessarily deserve for a lot of the work that they do, and they're trying to tell these narratives while they're kind of also being very stoical about the law. And so they may forget that there are powerful visual tools that they can use that can get their message across as a visual argument versus a verbal one, or it can bolster the verbal argument that they are making in court in a way that we see over and over again either leads to very quick settlement because nobody wants a jury to see a visual of something that actually occurred.
Wow.
Or that a jury does see this is what happened, this was admissible, this is perfect, and the verdicts are much higher because of the realistic aspect of what happened. If I say I had, I got in a car accident and I had to go through surgery on my leg or spine, or I suffered a traumatic brain injury. Well, me just telling you that is different than having an expert professional visual that has been marked as scientifically perfect in showing a jury that injury and that surgery and all of the invasive cuts and all of that kind of stuff like that. It's far more impactful upon a case, and it is in that form of marketing, and maybe a tool that attorneys don't often think about as bolstering their verbal argument.
Erin touched on the brain injuries, and I think that's one of the biggest one where a lot of attorneys have an issue. Their client seems fine, and as you were mentioning, you bring in the evidence, you bring in your client who looks fine but has a brain injury. How do you explain and show it? One of the best ways is the visual.
Nice.
So I got to ask, have you ever had that happen where you make this presentation and it's entered as evidence and opposing counsel sees it and it's just like, yeah, nope, we're going to settle right now?
All the time.
All the time.
Dude, that's awesome. I love it.
It's a trial. Yeah. It's an early, in fact, one of the suggestions was to, if you're going to use visual presentations, you admit it very, very early. Because when opposing counsel sees certain things, they know that that's going to be shown to someone that holds a verdict in their hand. They just settle.
Yeah, I think one of the attorneys that I've interviewed in the past that does this very well is Deborah Chang. She was telling us how she doesn't care what the case is. She has to be prepared. As soon as she gets the case, she prepares everything. She calls us for an animation as soon as she gets the case. She calls all her vendors and the contractors, and she gets all her work done ahead of time because she says for her, that is the key to settling before trial.
Here's a question about social media.
Okay.
We met through social media just being stupid.
Yes.
I mean...
Where's the cool kids club? Come on.
I mean, I know. So, but speak towards a little bit, because the next question is more about marketing in total. But I think social media marketing is something that lawyers and law firms are sort of struggling to find an authentic kind of, because they have a very reserved nature, because I'm not going to say a whole bunch of how I feel because of exactly what you were saying, Irma. I don't want to they have to be impartial they have to be super impartial. So they're not going to avail themselves of full authentic language on social media. So how does social media, like the way kind of we behave, which is just throwing GIFs of Nicolas Cage around and having fun and talking about food and arguing about, really lighthearted things, but having a good time and keeping the conversation going?
First, it's GIFs of Kenny Loggins.
Oh, don't even. Well, that's the start. But I mean, explain that. And just because it's so fun to meet somebody who's like-minded about that. Dan Beckley, and his work at the Ohio Bar, when he was there, same kind of vibe.
Absolutely.
Having fun, being silly. What's that about, Aaron?
I think that there's a professional level where there's a lot of things that attorneys and that people in the legal community cannot talk about. And so I think that we find ways to express our humanity, I guess you would say, without being too negative. And we find it in starting small rhetorical arguments or becoming a little more upbeat than maybe most of the social media is out there. And I think that is part of expressing more of the humanity within the legal community. You look at like Justice Dillard, who posts chamber music on Radiohead and things like that. You learn a more humanistic property to an attorney. What lawyers can do for the social media is pretty simple. It's just talk about what they enjoy that has nothing to do with necessarily just cases and the law and you kind of the normal stoical stuff, and get into, non-serious subjects like, does pineapple belong on a pizza? Is a hot dog a sandwich? Those sorts of things offer kind of a playful sort of word judo that attorneys always like to engage in, that is a little more upbeat than maybe our day-to-day lives. And I think that for social marketing, it's kind of like you said earlier, where we're all hanging out and the last thing we're going to talk about is business. You talk about who you are and what you're into and fun things, and listen more than you post, or support more than you're just bragging on your profile. I think a lot of standard marketing is, we're going to post to our Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn page, and then people are going to come and find us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how we roll.
Yeah, I think for our company, the biggest thing is, whether we're talking to an attorney or on social media, it's building relationships. And I think for us, that's the key.
Bam, bam. That's the bumper sticker right there.
Yeah. that we've been a part of. You fall into a Twitter thread that you can't get out of, and people sort of, whether they're attorneys or not, they start to respect you. They start to respect the profession. They start to, oh, you are a human. You're not a robot.
I think there's a little bit of a skill to that, and that is kind of maybe similar to cocktail parties or small talk or something like that. Because, I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of people who are just raging on social media. They're the social justice warriors. They're the, pushing politics or whatever. And it's like, no one would talk to you if this was face to face and you were doing that. You know what I mean? So there's a little bit different element.
The secret to all social media is you can be sassy, but never be negative. Right? You're not going to change the world on social media. You're just going to be talking about very negative things. And I think, as members of the legal community, being, very wise, and being wordsmiths, really, it's easy to fall into like a negative vibe. But honestly, who likes a negative post? But people love sassy posts.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And they like fun posts, and they like sort of, cunning, sort of things like that. Well, that's where attorneys, that's where they shine.
Mm-hmm.
And even the most stoical attorney in the world probably knows a lot of witty jokes and a lot of things that they can just come back. And once they discover that they can do that, and they're not being negative, and they're not drawing people in, you're not making any statements, you're just kind of having fun with language, that then they really, really explode. I mean, there's entities out there we could probably both name. A bar, possibly on the East Coast, probably Southeast Coast, but possibly a professor who likes two spaces after a period.
Oh, yep.
Right? I mean, there's once they've figured out that they don't have to be talking about serious issues all the time, that they can kind of have an upbeat personality and be sassy and never negative. That really tends to draw people in. That really tends to, they'll find you.
I love sass.
I
love sass.
Never negative.
It's so great. Well, but you know what? It's fun. It's verbal play. It's puns. It's everything that lawyers love, and that's why I love hanging out with lawyers, because they do appreciate jokes, and they go hard on context, and they look for clues, and they love to play, and so it's cool. And I'm glad to hear that, and I think you've made some pretty astute observations. But in regards to lawyers, at their law firm, like right now, not just in trial, but just in regards to like the way they run their meetings, the way they do intake, the way they do, some things at their law firm right now. What's some stuff that they can take away from DK Global? Like, as a media provider, marketing agency that works with lawyers, what's one tip that you could give these people?
Start thinking in a visual way. Like start posting or have someone that they work with start posting more pictures of just the things that they're involved with. And start, that would probably be my big tip. And it's really simple. I'm big on community involvement, which is a very easy thing to start with, and then become interested in tools that help you express things in a more visual way rather than just kind of a textual sort of normal old school way from the 90s. What would you say?
I think, Shirley, you're a human being that, you may have flaws and you may not always look great, but yeah, show the back of who you are. Like attorneys, every time I interview them, most of them are always so stiff. And when I interview them, I have to tell them, take a deep breath and loosen up a bit. Because you want to see who they truly are, not this facade in front of them, which I understand they think they have to have all the time because, they need to look professional. But show to the world that you're a human being. And I think that is what creates trust, whether it's with other people you work with or your own clients.
How can people learn more about DK Global? Where can they go? How can they learn more about you guys?
Well, obviously, you can find us on Twitter. The website, you can call us.
dkglobal.net. You can call that. You can go there, or you can call us at 909-747-0201. But yeah, we have our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can learn about it there or our website.
Or you can find us at a coffee shop in downtown Redlands. We're there quite a bit.
5 questions we ask everyone.
The insidious 5 questions we ask everyone. And I guess we will just ask you to trade. Number 1, what was the last book you read? Let's start with Aaron.
Last book I read is I Won the Laws of Style by Douglas Hand off of the American Bar Association. So I've been trying to read that to up my fashion game, but I'm badly failing.
That's great. Irma, how about you? What was the last book you read?
Actually, I haven't finished it yet, but it's Trevor Noah's Born a Crime.
Nice.
Righteous. Cool.
Yeah,
all right, number 2.
I'm loving the book.
Number 2. Let's start this one with Irma. What's your favorite place?
I thought about it. I was thinking about this hard, and then it just came to my mind. To be honest, wherever my family's at, that's my favorite place.
Aaron?
I don't know. My backyard's pretty cool.
It doesn't have to be somewhere exotic.
Okay. I had written down, I really like Big Sur. I like the Monterey Coast and Central, and I thought, no, I usually sit in my backyard and barbecue and garden. That's my favorite place probably to be.
Yeah, hell yeah. That sounds awesome. All right. Number 3. What sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with? Aaron, you're first.
Well, am I supposed to say Lawson?
Yes. It's required.
Yes. So I listen to Lawson podcast religiously. I also do all of any webinar I can get my hands on. I'm obviously a fan of Spy Fu and the Nacho Analytics group. Mm-hmm. Those guys, and any sort of form of either marketing or things like that, I'm all over. So I probably listen to a good 4 or 5 podcasts and different shows every week, from various companies. So
nice.
I'd say that.
Irma?
Like Aaron was saying, anything marketing related, PR or advertising, social media, I like to be on top of what's going on, what's changing. But for fun, I'd have to say comic book related, so Comic Find.
Here's the toughest question of the bunch. If you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be? Irma?
Does garlic count?
We'll allow it. Garlic is good. No, garlic is fine. We've had people say rum. We're pretty open.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. All right, Aaron, how about you? What you bringing?
I have to say A1 steak sauce. I mean, if I said anything else, like my friends in Tallahassee would never speak to me again. At least one wouldn't.
Nice.
So,
Yeah, well.
A1 steak sauce. You can put it on anything except steak.
That's hilarious. All right. Number 5. After a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind? Aaron.
I play really, really loud, aggressive rock and roll. I have amplifiers and music gear from years of playing music. And so, yeah, I get together with buddies and play really, really loud rock and roll.
Nice. All right. Irma?
Listening to music and playing video games. Gears of War is one that I'm playing right now, so yeah.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsomepodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.